Michelle Bishop wearing her work from home hoodie in front of her infamous lime green dining room wall. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to PAVA IRL, your favorite video blog that teaches you about PAVA priorities and practices in real life. I am, of course, your beloved host, Michelle Bishop, the Voter Access and Engagement Manager at NDRN, coming to you live. Why do I always say that on this video blog? That is not true. All of this is pre-recorded content coming to you via video while working from home. And we at NDRN and the voting team wanted to take a quick moment today to remind you that National Voter Registration Day is coming around again for 2023. It's going to be on September 19th. And we are hoping to see all of you signing up as partners, getting that awesome swag, and doing your best to register people with disabilities to vote. If you check in the notes, there are some links that'll help you get signed up as a partner for National Voter Registration Day. Feel free to tell them NDRN sent you. But until then, check out this clip of NDRN's very own voter engagement specialist, Monica Wiley, on a recent National Voter Registration Day webinar, schooling all of the other partners on how to make sure your voter registration events are accessible.
Oh, thank you so much for that warm introduction, Alan, and thank you for giving a great overview of what National Voter Registration Day looks like and the partners and everything that we can do here to continue to expand our partnership and supporting NVRD and everything that everyone else can do to support the work that we're doing to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to vote and has access to voting. Again, as Alan said, I am Monica Wiley. I serve as the voter engagement specialist here at the National Disability Rights Network. I have experience in the public and private sector working on voting initiatives. I was one of the individuals that was responsible for curbside voting in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Very proud of that work and to share in the great work that myself and what I call other foot soldiers in the disability army, troublemakers, but good troublemakers, that we have done some great work there in Virginia. I am now in the great state of Maryland and delighted to bring that work over to Maryland to make sure that we have curbside voting for people with disabilities, which leads to what my presentation is about. And so as you see here on the screen, it is about accessibility guide for people with disabilities, how to maximize and implement accessibility best practices for a National Voter Registration Day event. Now, before I begin, I will tell you that you can get so caught up in so much information pertaining to accessibility because there's a lot of accessibility work that needs to be done for people with disabilities as we continue to amplify and elevate the vote and voice of people with disabilities. And when I was creating my slides, I got so deep into everything that I was doing that I wanted to present that it took me a while to scale back some of the information because I want to make sure that you guys have the basic best practices that is needed for your NVRD event. And before I start with my presentation, I want to share with you, I am a person with a physical disability. It was caused by a drunk driver that killed my entire family at the age of 9. And so this work is very important to me for a myriad of reasons. But as an individual that was at 9 years old, was a person with a disability, didn't think or even imagine becoming disabled, now being in the cross disability community, it is very important to me to make sure that everyone has access and that everyone has the right to exercise their voice at the voting ballot. And so having said that, let's go ahead and get started with the presentation. So voters with disabilities, the U.S. Election Assistance Commission estimates that voters with disabilities represent roughly 1/6 of the American electorate. Voters with disabilities is a growing demographic that encompasses those with mobility, visual, communicative, physical, or cognitive challenges. As I share with you, I became disabled at the age of 9. The reason why our community is a growing demographic is because it could happen to anyone at any given time. And I also want to include parents and women that become temporary disabled because of their pregnancy. That was one of the reasons for why we wanted to make sure that curbside voting and that voting was accessible, because it needs to include parents, it needs to include women that are pregnant, because they do develop temporary disability. So they are a part of the demographic, may not be long-term, but they are a part of this growing demographic. And so that's why this demographic is growing, and that's why it's so diverse, and that's why it's so important that we make sure we implement some accessibility best practices at our event. So accessibility best practices. Below are some tips that you should consider for your National Voter Registration Day event. First is establishing an accessibility coordinator. Establishing this coordinator is very important because this designee will be responsible for overseeing and managing all phases of the event pertaining to voters with disabilities. And so the first thing you want to do that a accessibility coordinator would be responsible for is that person will be a part of the site selection. So when you are looking at the site and where you want to host your event, you should make sure you already have identified an accessibility coordinator, because that individual will be the voice with the rest of the individuals that are responsible for identifying and selecting this site for individuals with disabilities to be able to come and participate and vote. So always make sure that your accessibility coordinator is a part of the site selection. During the site selection, you should look for the following things. Always make sure at your event that you have signage. Signage is very, very, very important, because when you think about, again, curbside voting for individuals that will be voting from their vehicle or whatever method of transportation or apparatus that they are using, you want to make sure that they know exactly where to go, which will be where the curb cuts are, where the accessibility parking is located, which should be right there at the site where you're hosting your event or where voting is taking place. So signage is very important, and it should encompass the cross-disability community. And when I say the cross-disability community, I'm talking about individuals that mobility, such as myself, individuals that are blind, that are hard of hearing, senior citizens. That is the cross-disability community. And so your signage should reflect the cross-disability community at your site selection. The next bullet and best accessibility tip would be accessible parking. You want to make sure that between 3 to 7 spaces that should be assigned for accessibility parking, and within the 3 and 7 spaces to the minimum, that you should have about between 3 and 4 to be a van accessible, because you have individuals who drive with their wheelchair, and they need to be able to have full access to be able to get out of their vehicle properly without dinging another vehicle, without messing up their vehicle, to be able to make sure that they're able to fully access the curb cut. Because if you have a curb cut here, but you don't have the spaces big enough for an accessible van, then it's null and void. It's not active, it's not effective, it's not a good best practice. So make sure that you have designated at least 3 to 4 spaces for an accessible van, especially since members of the cross-disability community are beginning to drive and be a little bit more self-sufficient in that regard. So make sure that you have those spaces available, or a designated drop-off for those who use public transportation, such as the paratransit system. And the paratransit system consists of, the buses or taxis or ride shares that have accessible vans. So make sure that the designated drop-off spot is right there where the curb cut is, and kind of close to where the accessible parking is located. I did just briefly speak about ramps and curb cuts. These are access to sidewalks and entrances. But when we think about this is also good, again, when you're talking about women that are pregnant or they have their young child with them. This is also accessible for them as well, especially individuals that are disabled and pregnant. So make sure that you have ramps and curb cuts that are accessible to the sidewalk and that are accessible to your site. Also, make sure that you have the remote control disability door opener, because that is easier for individuals such as myself and several others who may not always have the strength all the time to open the door. And again, this is about making it accessible. Accessibility stands for access. The derivative of accessibility is access. We want to make sure that it is accessible, access for everybody. So remote control disability door opener should be one of your best practices for your site selection. Make sure at your site selection that your aisle access is approximately 33 to 36 inches for individuals that are in wheelchairs, individuals that use a walker, individuals who use a scooter. I use a travel scooter from time to time when I am traveling, when I'm at conferences, because the walking may be too far and I need to be able to bring maybe I may walk a little bit and carry my scooter with me, or maybe I may be in my scooter. You want to make sure that you have enough space, not just for myself, but for others that are also also there as well. So make sure that your aisle access is between 33 to 36 inches. It may seem like that's big, but it really isn't. And it gives everybody enough space and enough access. Again, enough access for everyone. The next accessibility tip that you should deeply consider is the accessible restrooms. Make sure again that there's a remote control disability door opener. For someone such as myself, I tend to hold it a lot. So when I need to get to that bathroom, I need to get to that bathroom immediately. And so you want to make sure, again, to be able to access the restroom, make sure that disability door opener is there. Make sure that there are grab bars near the toilet stalls so that you are able to, if you need that extra additional support, to be able to grab to that bar by the toilet stall for that assistance. That is definitely critical for individuals with disabilities. So just some more additional basic accessibility best practices tip for your site selection and for voting day. Make sure that you always have an American Sign Language interpreter or have CART, which is Communication Access Real-Time Translation. And that provides basically for whatever is being spoken about, whatever text, for it to be shown on your monitor or on your screen. And so CART is definitely very important for individuals that are blind, individuals that are hard of hearing. That is very good, a very basic tip, or even for individuals who may have missed something because maybe they were so busy, helping out or doing something, and they missed something. They missed something that was very important. CART is very, very important, very critical. And then you want to make sure that there's American Sign Language interpreter at your event. Just a few more basic accessibility tips for you. Just make sure that all of your material come in a variety of formats. All of us see differently. I wear glasses. Now, granted, there's some lovely fancy glasses to match my style, my look, and my outfit, but also I wear glasses because I need to be able to see. I cannot see long distance. And so I figured if I'm going to wear some glasses, they're going to be some nice fashionable glasses. So having said that, you want to make sure everyone's vision is different. Everyone's way of communicating and receiving the information is different. So you want to make sure that you have your material in Braille. That is for individuals that are blind. You want to make sure that you have it in large print. Sometimes I like large print just for the fact of having it large. It just all depends on you and depends on that person's need. You want to make sure that it is in plain text. Make sure that it's plain. Make sure that everything that you're communicating, all of your best practices and tips are in plain text. Then you want to make sure that you have audio description. This is basically when you have a one-on-one description that is basically provided by someone who sits with a person that is blind and has asked for voice description. This is basically a rule of thumb, and it always should be provided for an image description here. And then lastly, I just think this is something good to always to have, because you never know, sometimes depending on the weather, depending on how your body is feeling, maybe, something may be going on, or, you may need some aspirin. You forgot to get some aspirin, or just depending on whatever may be happening with you. You should always consider having some type of medical staff on site, because you just never know what may take place, what may happen, again, depending on the weather, depending on how you're feeling. Everything, just consider all of those factors. And so you want to make sure that you have someone on staff, on site, a medical staff on site there at your site selection or at your site. So the last couple of slides are just a depiction of some signage, of what signage could look like. And then just a representation of individuals from the cross-disability community. And so this is just, again, just some examples of what signage will look like at your site or at your event, to make sure that everyone is included, including people with disabilities. Lastly, this is just some more of some different signage, different reflections of my lovely community, the cross-disability community, what it looks like when we are voting, what it looks like as you're waiting in line to vote, as you see someone is just about to cast their vote. And so this concludes my presentation. I hope these best practices are something that you can take with you as you are getting prepared for National Voter Registration Day and beyond. These are just some basic tips that can be used for every event that you are having or that you are hosting. And so I hope this was very helpful to you, and I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Monica. As always, we appreciate your zeal. Everyone, don't forget to click on the link below so you can sign up for a partner of National Voter Registration Day if you haven't done so already. And we'll see you all September 19th.